domains, and other top-level domains such as .org and others have already begun that implementation process and in fact are signed today. So it's at the top-level domain, it's happening pretty quickly. There are a lot of tools out there, but those tools need to be improved unless you've got a lot of time on your hands.
We are at the first wave of a revolution in DNSSEC. 18 months ago, the unquestionable reality was deploying DNSSEC was a train wreck. Everyone knew it, everyone was open with it, but we all knew it was going to get better. In those 18 months, when you look around today, you see 3 remarkably mature open source solutions, Open DNSSEC, Power DNSSEC, which I believe is public, and even Bind 9.7 has made a lot of strides in what they call DNSSEC for humans. We're also seeing very nice commercial products from Accelerants, from Secure64, and from Infoblox. The Infoblox solution is great, just commenting is wonderful. And beyond that, the managed solutions out there are fantastic. You know, Affilius, VeriSign, DIN.org, UltraDNS, the amount of things that are out there to make DNSSEC operationally viable is enormous. It's only going to get better. If you've ever heard this stuff is hard, it's getting a lot easier. You asked very specific questions about timelines. Here are the timelines that I see. I see over the course of the next 6 months, it becoming clear that there's a new generation of best practices to develop for how to affordably and effectively deploy DNSSEC. At the end of those 6 months, we'll start seeing the beginning of products and services that depend on your infrastructure having DNSSEC available. After about 9 months of those being available, we'll start seeing the big guys start moving their products over to this. Meaning, over the course of the next year and a third to 2.5 years, we'll really see some interesting stuff happen. Now, you're right, it's not instantaneous, but this train is moving, and nothing's going to stop it.
I just want to build on that very quickly in terms of time frames. As Ken mentioned, the time frames for .net and .com for those zones being signed, within 12 months, it looks quite certain that well over half of all the domain names in the world will fall under top-level domains that have been signed under DNSSEC, because the major top-level domains are working on that, and so good progress is being made on that side, which provides an important part of the foundation, as well as the others in terms of the software enhancements. The other thing I want to mention for a second is parties here have been very kind in recognizing ICANN's role in DNSSEC and IETF's role. I also want to recognize the Department of Commerce and VeriSign, who've been partners that we've worked together with side by side on signing the route, and thank them and recognize them. So please give a hand to those parties, if you would, for everything they've done. Thank you.
Man, people give me way too much credit.
And I'd just like to add, again, from a deployment perspective, you've heard kind of Dan's vision of where this is going to be. If you have a large organization, if you have a small organization, you need to start thinking about it and planning now, because you start gathering your resources, start inventorying your environment. This is, I mean, even if you decided to do it today, it's going to take a little while to do this. So you need to start the planning process now for the benefits that we're going to see in the 9 to 18 month time frame.
Yeah, I'd like to build on something Dan said and maybe get Whit's perspective on this as well. For the first time, we actually have a pretty seamless signed message system that almost every computer can digest, okay, where the packets are digitally signed. And once this is fully implemented, we tend to think of DNSSEC as only about domain names themselves and not about the rest of the information and the other kinds of things that could be carried. The possibilities, I think, are way beyond just just protecting against cache poisoning and things like that. I think it's a message system now that has some inherent security, which will allow us to transport other kinds of information in the information we haven't even thought of yet. That I think is going to be very interesting, and I think this now opens a possibility because it is so seamless and the trust is so seamless that the user doesn't have to do anything, but it can be built into software to take complete advantage of that. I'd kind of like to get Whit's kind of perspective on that, having seen PKI evolve over the years.
Yeah, well, that sounds right to me. Once you get a working mechanism, that people will then, the way things evolve is people push it to do things that you had never expected it to do before. So yes, I expect this. I'm with you.
I guess I wanted to, following up on that, just to put something out to some of the other folks on the panel. You know, what kinds of products and services do you think will best take advantage of that kind of a trust infrastructure? Because we've talked about it several times in the past, where there are, you know, it opens, you know, Ken said it opens up a new vista around trust and stuff. So what do you think are the first new things that will take advantage of that?
When I receive email from my bank, I would like to know it actually came from my bank. This is a promise we have been making for 15 years, and we're not succeeding. So the number one application I really see us finally, after all these years, getting secure email. I also see federated identity actually working. One of the demos that I'm really excited about is the ability to say, you know what, I have to maintain that machine over there. So, you know, I'm a Dan at remote vendor. I need to log into root@somecustomer.org, and I need it to just work. And would you believe it? With DNSSEC, it actually did. So there's been so much. How many of these federated identity systems have we seen come across our desks and we go ahead and we test them and they work great, and then, you know, you actually try to deploy them and they don't scale? Yeah, I'm done with that. I want security systems at scale. And as Whit has basically pointed out very cleanly, we now have the namespace in which this can actually be done.
Great. And thanks, Dan. And Sandy, in response to your question, I just say, as an observer here, I mean, I want to build off the comments that Jeff Moss made this morning in the opening session. How many people heard Jeff's remarks at the opening session this morning? Okay. Well, as you recall, what Jeff talked about is he said, you know, we've been working on security for many years. Black Hat's been meeting for 13 years, but what's really been accomplished? I mean, what success has really been scored that's changed the security situation or landscape for corporations, users, governments, other parties? And his comment was, there really hasn't been a lot, but today and now there is one, and that's DNSSEC. That this is a major change and a milestone in security opportunity for the internet. What we see happening and hope to have happen with so many talented people on this stage and elsewhere is a profusion of applications, technologies, and tools that'll leverage this new piece of infrastructure that in some ways is like the GPS system, right? I mean, the GPS system got developed for a very narrow, specific set of applications initially, but then became a service that could be leveraged by many different new and unanticipated applications that got developed over time, many of which are now on our cell phones. That wouldn't have been envisioned at all when GPS was developed. So this is a very fundamental new technology that's being introduced, and we'll be excited to see, Sandy, what everyone comes forward with. Any other questions? We have a, yes, sir, please.
I'm curious what your thoughts are on social engineering threats, cousin domains, IDN spoofing attacks, things like that. Is there an opportunity for DNSSEC to fix those problems, or those things that need to be fixed higher in the application stack?
So this is actually a fascinating question, because a lot of people have asked, why can't ICANN do something about like bank-of-america.com? You know, why is this a thing that happens? And the thing is, DNS's strength is that it is a delegated namespace. that once you have a chunk, as long as no one else is using that chunk, you can put whatever you want in there. Making DNS not DNS is not going to work. That is what extended validation is for. That is what certificate authorities are for. And a lot of people think DNSSEC means we aren't going to need the CAs anymore. They're wrong. The certificate authorities are more important now than they've ever been, because they are the third parties that have boots in the ground all over the world to differentiate what is a domain and what is a brand. Brands are a closed namespace. You can't have something that's like McDonald's dash dash. Like, you can do that with domains all day. You can't do that with brands. We see DNSSEC actually bolstering extended validation. There were some brilliant attacks run by Mike Zussman and Alex Sodorov against extended validation last year at Black Hat that talked all about the limitations of extended validation. Those limitations are actually completely resolvable as long as DNSSEC can provide the exclusive description that not only is this an extended validation cert, but this is the only certificate for this domain. That is a fundamental transformation in our ability to deliver secure systems.
Yeah, I wouldn't get a false sense of security in some of these areas, though, because here's an interesting scenario. What if someone did in fact register bank-of-america.com and then signed it? They control their keys, right? So they can sign their own zone if they want. You'll get a response that says that it's signed, but would you have actually noticed if it was --of America? And that's where some of these other elements that Dan has talked about are going to become more important, where yes, the answer that you got was digitally signed, but whom digitally signed it, and is it really Bank of America, or is it this other fictitious company? With respect to social engineering, though, there are lots of aspects of social engineering, and I think it's also important to realize, particularly in the DNS system, that wherever human beings are involved, there is a risk of the human beings making a mistake. In other words, someone calling up and saying, I'm a representative of Bank of America and I want to make a change to my domain name, change the name servers, et cetera, or change my keys or what have you. Those things are attempted every day, and there's a lot of work that's being done at ICANN and within the DNS community to try to thwart some of those efforts and make it much more difficult to do that through multi-factor authentication and through other areas. But social engineering is not a new problem. It's one of the oldest hacking techniques out there. But wherever human beings are involved, there is a risk of someone making a mistake, and this can't prevent that, but it can make it certainly much more difficult.
Are we going to be able to still see South Park being streamed over DNS? And what I really mean by that is, what are the performance hits?
What was the question?
The question is, and you actually are the expert in managing a large-scale high-performance name server.
Yeah.
The question is, what will the impact be of DNSSEC on the performance of the DNS?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, some of our colleagues have done some fairly large-scale tests. Comcast, for example, is one of our customers that's done a number of different tests on fairly large-scale infrastructures. And I can tell you that the signatures are large, and the amount of memory taken up to run the DNS in that scenario for large ISPs and tier 1 providers and things like that is non-trivial. So there's a lot of work that they're going to have to do and deploy more servers as well. There'll be increased traffic on the route and the top-level domain servers as well, in terms of the amount of traffic that's coming in, both UDP and probably also TCP traffic as well. I think people are just getting a handle on that, but I have to say, I think that it's like one of those things that 10 years ago, the amount of computing power that I had in my desktop, I now have in my iPhone, probably even more in my iPhone today, and the capabilities of it. So I think it's not so much that the march of technology won't catch up to it. I guess that's the best way of saying it.